Hi, I'm Caitlin and this is Book Chats. Today's Top 5 Wednesday is Top 5 Books I Devoured. This topic had so many possible books I could put in it. I read pretty voraciously in general, and there's definitely books that take me a lot to get through. I just drag myself through 2 books. But when a book works, or when it's something about it just catches my attention, I often will read it very quickly or just devour it. And when I was looking at these, I decided specifically to try to choose books that you probably have not heard about before, definitely on my channel, and maybe not in BookTube in general either. So with maybe one exception, I think that these are books that I have not talked about before. And depending on which kind of, some of them you might have heard of if you like follow certain circles, but hopefully you haven't heard a ton about here on BookTube. So I hope that I am introducing you to new things. But without further ado, here are my top 5 books that I devoured. So book number 5 is one that I think is really humorous, or the humor really worked for me. And so if the humor also works for you, I think you'll devour it. And if the humor doesn't work for you, you're not going to like it at all. I have friends who have not liked this book at all, and then I've liked it, and the person who, of course, recommended it to me enjoyed it. The writer also wrote for the television show Arrested Development back in the day, so the humor is a little bit like that. So to give you an idea what the humor is like. And this is probably the most well-known book on this list, save maybe number 1. It's called You Go Bernadette by Maria Semple. It has kind of a difficult to explain plot, but essentially, the mother of this family in Seattle has disappeared without warning, and her daughter is going through kind of these papers and records and trying to figure out what happened. And this story that emerges is very absurd, and all of it to me came off as very humorous, even though it's like very improbable, and I thought it was really funny, so I read it very quickly. Book number 4 is actually a duet, but I can't pronounce the name of the duet, so I'm just going to tell you the first book. It's The Native Star, I believe by M.K. Hobson. It is a fantasy in a Western setting where magic is like a big part of the United States, and there's some magic going on, and then there's like these evil kind of bubbling pools of things coming up, and I'm not going to explain the plot well because it's a very complex plot. But basically, there's 2 things that like made me read this so quickly. One is that it has a fabulous kind of like opposites attract, sparking, arguing romance plotline going on, and I am often a sucker for those. The other is that this kind of concept of like this Western setting, but with this magic and like different parties at play in the magic is actually felt very original to me and very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. I definitely would recommend this duet if that's something that sounds interesting to you. My explanation is really bad, so please read the real explanation. I'll put a link to that below. Book number 3 is My Fair Godmother by Jeanette Rallison. This was the first book by Jeanette Rallison that I read, and I've since come to realize that in general, a lot of her humor really works for me, but this is still probably my favorite of the books that I've read of hers. Basically, the concept is, in the first 10 pages, you get kind of this love story, and it's adorable, and it's like, oh, but what about the girl who was set aside for this beautiful love story to happen? What happens to her? And she is assigned a fairy godmother, but her fairy godmother isn't a fairy godmother, she's just a fair godmother. She kind of tries to make this girl's situation better, but in doing it, she actually, like, makes it absurdly worse. So she ends up getting transported to, like, this fantasy land where it's kind of a fairy tale, but not, because, like, all of these other problems arise. I definitely recommend checking it out if that sounds like something that would be entertaining to you. Book number 2 is one that I still consider one of the most original YA fantasy kind of alternate histories that I have read. It is another duet from New Zealand. I'm forever thankful to my friend Madigan for introducing me to this duet. It's so original and so good. The first book is called Dream Hunter, and the duet is called The Dream Hunter Duet, and it's by Elizabeth Knox. This story essentially is about New Zealand-like place in like kind of Victorian era. I think it's like the turn of the 19th century. I could be wrong there. It's basically this alternate New Zealand in which there's this thing called the place that only some people can access, and basically like it's just this like part of the map where if you're one of these people who can access it, when you walk there you just disappear and you're in another place, but other people like are still in New Zealand, and in the place people can go to specific spots, and like just sleep, and they will catch like these dreams, and then they can come out and they like perform these dreams by like sleeping in these like public amphitheaters, and everyone around them sleeps, and then they can like share the dream. And so they will go catch like good or interesting or exciting or happy dreams and like bring them out. But there's also like this subcurrent where they are also kind of evil or upsetting dreams, and the government might be using them for something nefarious. And also there's like dreams that people haven't discovered yet in the place because the place isn't completely mapped yet. And it opens with two sisters, one of whom is the daughter of the person who first discovered the place, and the other of whom is the daughter of someone who is a very famous dream hunter. And these two girls are cousins. They've been close their whole life. And in your, I think it's your 16th year, you get to kind of test whether or not you can visit the place on a testing day. So it's their designated testing day, and they're going together, and one of them discovers she can visit the place and the other one cannot. And it goes on from there. And it's a story about a little bit about kind of the jealousy involved there, but not totally. It's also about this mysterious place and how it got there. It's also about kind of this family heritage because, you know, these are the two daughters of people who are very famous dream hunters. Dream hunters are what the people who go get the dreams are called. It's also fascinating because women tend to be more likely to visit the place than men, and so like they have this like really powerful position as dream hunters when otherwise in society they don't have power. Fascinating, fascinating on so many levels, in so many ways. I'm not doing it justice, guys, but it's amazing. I've read one of Elizabeth Knox's other books that was her other YA novel and really enjoyed it. I have not read any of her adult stuff because I don't really think it's my cup of tea, but a lot of people have really enjoyed her adult stuff. And I would just highly recommend that if anything I said sounds vaguely interesting to you, please check out this duet of books. They are so good and so original. Book number one is one I think I've actually talked about before in this channel, but I love it so much, and it kind of is a play on words when I talk about how I devoured this book, because it is Mary Roach's Gulp, which is, it has a subtitle but I don't remember. It is a nonfiction book about the alimentary canal, so it starts at the top and ends at the bottom and goes through kind of each stage and just has the most fascinating little tidbits. I love Mary Roach. I've talked before about how she's my favorite science writer writing right now. I also am obsessed with and love the digestive system in humans and other species alike. It's part of what I studied as an undergrad in college. It's something I've always been interested in, and this book kind of combines those loves, and I find myself quoting this book so much, guys. I will be like, yeah, I read this book and it had a really interesting chapter where they talked about how dog food is manufactured, or yeah, I read this book and it had a really interesting chapter about saliva. This book was perfectly designed for me to enjoy it. I can't even, it was amazing. What books kind of have you devoured? Have you noticed, like, do you read funny books fast? Do you read, like, things you find very original fast? Do you read a specific genre faster than others? Let me know down in the comments. And I also wanted to say there's still about a half of a week left in my A Court of Thorns and Roses giveaway, so if you haven't entered, please check out that video, which I will put a card to if I remember, and please consider entering and spreading the word. I would love as many of you as possible to have a chance to win this signed copy of Sarah Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I'll see you all later. Bye!